Welcome to the Chalkboard Conversations podcast, presented by Party Politics US.
It's Wednesday night at 7 p.m., so it must be Chalkboard Conversations podcast, presented by Party Politics US. I want to thank everyone who's out there who's watching us this evening. We got a great show ahead for you. Waiting for us to have our first part of our conversation is State Senator Elgie Sims, who introduced incredibly historic legislation to address criminal justice reform. And in fact, I've been talking to legislators around the country who want to talk with him because they want to pattern and use some of what he did in Illinois for some of their legislation in the future. But before we bring him on, I'm going to bring my wonderful co-host on, Nick Jackson. What's up, Nick?
Hey, what's up?
Earl, what's going on?
How you guys doing?
JSMILES. And I don't know, is our executive producer coming out?
She says no, not tonight, but I think she wants to be the voice of God again.
All good, all good. Listen, it's been another week. Tomorrow's supposed to be a humdiggity of a day with these QAnon folks or whatever. They want to swear in the Donald Trump, the loser. But what's going on? How was you all's week? What are you guys thinking about this craziness that is, even like Congress is talking about voting tonight instead of tomorrow so that they can get out because they keep hearing that there are credible threats again of attacks on the United States Capitol.
Yeah, I don't understand how that's not a terrorist threat. Like, I don't understand how the second you say something like that, your door isn't kicked in, we aren't dragging people out, blah, blah. Like if Al-Qaeda was bold enough to do it the week before and run an entire social media campaign and we didn't kick in their door to go pull them out, I would be wondering about leadership at that point. So now I'm trying to figure out if someone's already put a target on your back. I don't want to take too much time, but if someone's already put a target on your back and it's been obvious, what are we waiting for? They just
one of the things I do not understand about all this is when I look back at that tape where that woman, Ashley, I can't remember her last name, went through that glass. You all remember when they were trying to bang down that glass and she went through there? It was like watching a horror movie. It was like as soon as she went through there, they shot her. They just like weasel back. It's like, oh shit, they're shooting at us. And I don't want to be one on this show saying that I'm promoting violence, but when we keep hearing about a pipe bomb, for instance, in a voting precinct yesterday in Iowa, I don't understand why use of force is not necessary or locking people up. They talked about locking Hillary up. Now, why can't we talk about locking these people up? Jay,
it's the difference in hue.
Yeah, we know. I didn't want to say it. I was waiting for you all. We know what it is. We know exactly.
Sorry, Jay. I didn't mean to step on that. I just had to jump in
because I don't know if y'all watched it, but I saw Judas and the Black Messiah. And when you look at that, and you look at so many other things over the course of history, we were talking about One Night in Miami a couple weeks ago, and what happened with Sam Cooke, what happened with Malcolm X, what happened with Dr. King, what happened with Medgar Evers. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on.
Well, even Billie Holiday. I mean, I just watched the U.S. The United States. It was so good. It was so good. But yeah, I mean, they were trying to stop her from singing "Strange Fruit," and I didn't know the history about that song, and it was a poem and all of that. So, they've been trying to kind of rattle our cages for eons to just try to stifle us. But Jay, I'm sorry, I kind of stepped on you again.
No, sweetheart. This is our free form. So we have a little bit to wax philosophically. Right. I appreciate this part of it. So, one thing I was encouraged by yesterday was the FBI director when he was speaking on the Senate floor, and he said, we consider the storming of the Capitol on January 6th to be domestic terrorism. He said it. He said it more than once. He said it over and over again. He said it has been on the rise for years. It is not going to stop anytime soon. So it's not that our
that's not that optimistic.
The arms of the government that are in charge of arresting and inspecting individuals seem to be aware. Some of the talking heads and media pundits might not be using the language. But that's not to say that nobody's paying attention. I would offer that maybe it would have been worse, right? The FBI and CIA have never told us out loud the stuff that they squash. They have never tweeted, you know what? We just kept y'all from dying because we foiled 18 different papers that was supposed to happen. That's not their job, right?
No,
Trump and his cronies took us a little bit off track with this fake version of transparency. We're going to tell you what we're doing. We're going to tell you what we're doing.
Drain the swamp.
And how we're going to do it, which is a lie. They weren't really telling us anything. But the FBI and the CIA, they're not supposed to freaking tell us what they're on to and who they're arresting. We're supposed to not know. We're supposed to feel safe and go to sleep at night. And the Capitol is just supposed to damn be there with the flag at the top. So I'm good with it. I'm good with the fact that maybe on the 6th, what if it was supposed to be 250,000 people and they kept it to only 1,500? But they can't, come out and say that because then they would be tipping their hand to all the stuff that they did squash.
I don't know. I think. Go ahead, Earl. No, go ahead.
Jay, I was just trying to imagine the FBI director just coming on a microphone one day and go, I can't really go into it, but New Jersey, y'all welcome. And then gets off a microphone.
Well, maybe he needs
actually, I would like to see that. Florida,
right.
If I was y'all, I would send me something in the mail. I like whiskey. It's all good.
Definitely Atlanta, I'm sure that we owe them something.
For Atlanta.
Homeland Security, they're like, listen, while y'all over here worried about that wall, you need to be worried about the South Carolina border. We've been holding y'all down.
I bet in Atlanta, overtime's always approved. Overtime's always approved in Atlanta.
That airport is serious.
Keep going.
Well, let me ask you all something. So next week, Shelley Winters in North Carolina is going to come on. We had an incredible conversation the other day where we were talking about the elections, and she was talking about voting in North Carolina. And she said, Atiba won as a woman, as a Black woman, North Carolina, pretty volatile. She was like, I went out and got a gun. Here's the truth. She said, I thought what I saw happen on January 6th with the insurrection was actually going to happen in voting precincts around the country. Now, I sent her what I saw today about what happened in Iowa yesterday, where a pipe bomb was found in a voting precinct. Didn't we hear about pipe bombs being found on January 6th at the RNC and the DNC? So there's something that's got to be relative. So what you're saying, Jay, in terms of Christopher Wray talking about, maybe drop him a line to say thank you, or thanking the FBI agents. The other piece of this, though, that's still bothering me is we're talking about how the military has been infiltrated. We've known that police departments have been infiltrated. Really looking forward to having Senator Sims come on and talk about the legislation he's introduced in the state that he introduced and was passed and was signed into law in Illinois. But, I feel like people have gotten a little comfortable since January 20th because things got quiet. And last Sunday, the orange man came out and spoke, and all of a sudden you seeing all this stuff coming out again. So, these things are really, really important. And I think they're really important for us to be talking about, but it's also important for us to be really thinking that we're far from past what was going on.
I agree with that. I do agree with that. Has anyone, okay, I don't read, but I devour.
Like Sarah Palin.
I'm a listener.
You sound like Sarah Palin. I just read what's in front of me. Whatever's in front of me.
What magazines? All of them. All of the magazines.
Malcolm Gladwell, Talk to Strangers. You're familiar with that?
No, but I'm not trying to talk to no strangers these days.
I mean, don't talk to strangers. I'm messing up the title. Look it up in this. Don't talk to strangers. How I talk to strangers. Oh man, it's a bestseller, and I'm totally screwing it up. Please don't listen to me right now about that part. But anyway, he goes back. It's a wonderful audiobook too, and he talks about how in the history of world leaders, we have done an awful job, humankind, at interpreting each other's spirit, body language, gestures.
It's called talking to strangers.
Yeah, talking
what
to
we
strangers.
should know.
Thank you. That. And so the point
I read.
Thank you. I listen. Thank you so much. Our fearless leader. One of the best parts that I remember in that is this.
Jay's got one. It's the score 2-1 now.
Thanks for keeping score. Is that
I'm in rare form right now. Sorry, Jay.
That's fine. He breaks down how many times world leaders blew it in understanding, and then what actually might have ended up in a war, and how World War II may have been avoided if a few world leaders had have taken their foot out of their mouth. They're like, oh yeah, I got it. I talked to him. I understood. That's my guy. And it didn't work because they missed it. Or how spies were double and triple spies for so many different countries because they were good at it back in the early 1900s and the 1920s, 1930s. So my point to this is not to scare anyone, but to say it's not new. I mean, whether you're Christian or not, Judas turned his boy in. I mean, that's his boy. If you want to believe, that's his dog. I mean, Atiba, that's like one of us bringing party politics down. One of us on your screen with you, not an enemy. One of your your people. So
walk right there.
Boom. So
that's why nobody names their children Judas.
Huh?
Nobody names their children Judas.
Right.
Not yet.
I think there's some other reasons why we don't name our kids Judas, but that's it's got a history of being
recognize. I hope that generally speaking, we keep our energy up and our fight up. Just as we have one little slice in humanity, right? We're only but a blip in the world of humankind, and we have our part to play in trying to make it better. But it's kind of always been like this, where there's some a-holes, and we're just trying to root them out.
Well, listen, we got Senator Sims behind in our virtual green room. But before we go to him, I want to ask Nick, you want to give people a teaser as to what you're going to be talking about tonight in the Sip of the Brew?
Well, my teaser, speaking of tease, Andrew Cuomo's popping up a little bit, and
damn, that was a good okay.
Yeah, and just stay tuned to see what he had to say about this whole like touchy-feely situation.
I think he thought he was teasing, but there was no pleasing going on over there.
I have my thoughts on that. It may be a little controversial, but I would just say you put a lot of. Never mind. I don't want to get us in trouble, but I will just say you put a lot of 65, 63-year-old men, put their actions on the, judging block, and a lot of people are going to get in trouble. It's just, my dad, starting with my dad. I mean, just.
Oh, Dan, you throwing people under the bus. Let's go. Earl, what you got to talk about during thanks management?
Just how CVS could help the environment. That's all. I've got a few ideas of how CVS could help the environment, but we'll get to that.
Jay, we have a serious conversation now with Senator Sims coming up, but how are you going to lighten this all up?
I'm going to take an ode to our distinguished guest and his criminal justice reform. And I'm going to lighten it up a little bit with my topic is WEED, WEED, the people. Right?
Okay.
We're going to see how, I don't think the weed people the weed people aren't being treated properly. So I'm gonna be an activist for them.
Well, I'm definitely looking forward to you all segments. We're gonna ask you all to go back to the green room. We're gonna bring out Senator Elgie Sims, who represents the 17th district in Illinois. He is a state senator, and he introduced, got passed, and signed into law historic legislation that everybody is talking about all over the country. I know I've been reading different news stories. I've been seeing you all over the place on the news. Thank you so much, Senator Sims, for joining me tonight.
Team, it's always a pleasure to be with you, brother. Good to see you.
All right. So, you know, it's funny and nice for me when I get to have elected officials who I have known for a long time. And I know that our audience is always like, well, Dad, it seems like you know a lot of different people. Well, you know, been working in this arena for a long time. But what always excites me is to see the work and the great work that you all are doing on the state level. And often we keep hearing about what's going on in the federal level. I don't believe that we hear enough about what's going on in the state level. But when we hear about legislation like this that you got passed in Illinois, can you tell us a bit about, you know, was it a challenge? This bill addresses police accountability. It addresses bail. There's so many different facets into it. Tell us, you know, how did you get it done?
Well, you know, Tiva, this is the Safety Act is the most comprehensive pro-safety, pro-reform, pro-community bill that has ever been passed. The Safety Act, it reimagines what public safety looks like. And the difference here is that the advocates really had a seat at the table. That was the difference in this process versus others. You know, this was not a process. And the fact that the advocates had that seat at the table, it has made some of the opponents, it has made them even more eager to try to overturn what we've done and to try to attack what we've done, because this was truly a community-led effort. We all saw what happened back in last summer with the lynching of George Floyd. But a lot of these efforts really started before that. I mean, I've been working on, you know, bail reform for several years now, working on police accountability issues since my days in the House. And I got elected to the Illinois House in 2012, served as a House Judiciary Criminal Committee for several years, passed the state's first body camera law for the state of Illinois that allowed for body cameras statewide. Then passed the Bail Reform Act in 2017, which was the precursor to the Safety Act, which allowed for decisions to be made based on violent versus nonviolent offenses, detention decisions to be made versus violent versus nonviolent offenses. And then now the Safety Act in 2021. And the Safety Act, you know, again, it really reimagines what public safety is, and it allows for communities to have their voices be heard. And there are a number of issues and areas that are covered. You know, as you mentioned, you know, obviously the cash bail, because decisions should be made based on a person's threat or their ability not to appear in court. But it also implements a certification and decertification process for law enforcement officers. It mandates the use of body cameras statewide by 2025. It modernizes our sentencing laws. It allows for and removes. Illinois has a requirement that a sworn affidavit would have to be signed in order for a complaint to be made against law enforcement officers. Well, the Safety Act changes that. We remove that from the law. It improves de-escalation and mental health training for law enforcement officers. I created a public misconduct database, two public misconduct databases. So any misconduct, one can be viewed by the public and one could be viewed by prosecutors. It requires, you know, police officers to have special plans for children and vulnerable populations when they're executing search warrants. It empowers the state's attorney general to investigate deaths occurring in custody. It also gives our state's attorney general patterns and practices authority. So the United States Department of Justice has powers of practice and authority, and they can institute consent decrees against cities. Well, now our state attorney general has that same power. It also bans the use of chokeholds and other extreme measures, creates statewide use of force standards by 2022. It really is a comprehensive pro-safety bill.
It is, and I talked to some state legislators around the country, and I'm hoping, I know I've passed on your contact information, and hopefully they're reaching out, or they will be reaching out to you, because a lot of them have been talking about introducing legislation in their respective chambers and their states. But, you know, one of the things that, you know, you mentioned the bail piece. I want to go back to that, but there is also a piece that about changing the law around suspending driver's licenses, which I think was a really big piece, because I don't know how many people know that, you know, it's not just about the suspension of the license. It's that if your license has been suspended and you get pulled over for a traffic infraction, did I get that right? For breaking the law with speeding or whatever, that you can get arrested for driving on a suspended license. And sometimes people don't know that their licenses have been suspended.
Mm-hmm. But, you know, and then, and the T with that, when you talk about that in particular, if you didn't know the license were suspended, or if you didn't have the money to pay for the ticket in the first place, and then you go and if you didn't have money to pay for the ticket, then you have a bail posted, and then you end up in jail. You know, studies have shown that after 3 days, your life starts to unravel when you are locked in the county jail, and on a pre-trial basis, because you've not been convicted of a crime yet. But after 3 days, you lost your job. You become housing insecure. You may have childcare issues. There are just a whole host of issues that happen. So when we wanted to have that discussion about and remove that barrier to individuals being able to climb out of conditions, because that's part of our challenge. You know, communities, Black communities and other marginalized communities have been under-resourced, over-policed, and over-incarcerated for far too long. And this gives us the ability to reimagine and change the way we think. We 40 years and plus, we've been following this mass incarceration playbook as if somehow sentences in and of themselves make us safe. Harsher sentences don't make us safe. What makes us safe is the fact that the likelihood that you will be arrested if you break the law. That's what makes us safe. The likelihood that other alternatives exist to sentencing, or other alternatives exist to the criminal justice system. You know, the reason we talked about this criminal justice reform package that we passed. You know, we didn't want to just pass one bill, but we looked at criminal justice holistically, because it sits at the end of failures in all the other areas. If you don't properly educate a child, they end up in the school to prison pipeline, and they end up in the criminal justice system. If you have a mental health or a substance abuse disorder, you end up in the criminal justice system oftentimes. If you are economically insecure and you don't have the ability to provide for yourself or your family, you are going to engage in behaviors that lead you to the criminal justice system. So the criminal justice system, it sits at the end of all those other failures. But you've got to reimagine and ask why. Why are we having these challenges, and how do we make it so we keep individuals out of the criminal justice system? And if they do come into contact with the criminal justice system, how do we return them to their fullest usefulness?
Mm-hmm. So now you mentioned over policing. You know, another thing in terms of how your bill, how this law is going to help. You know, I remember when I was working for the National Black Caucus of State Legislators, oftentimes when people were coming in to talk with me from a policy standpoint about criminal justice reform, we often talked about overcharging and over sentencing. Now, will this bill help to address some of that too?
Yeah, it certainly modernizes our sentencing laws. One of the things that was extremely important for us, you know, we have one of these relics of the past, one of these three strikes and you're out laws. In Illinois, it's called a habitual criminal statute. So we changed that. So we were finding that individuals they already had the two strikes. Their third strike might be something that's non-violent, but it was a felony nonetheless. So you end up with a class X felony, or in Illinois, could be 25 years to life for a retail theft. That's a low level non-violent offense. That doesn't make sense. So that's how we are reimagining what those sentencing laws look like. You shouldn't, the habitual criminal statute was not, it certainly wasn't intended in my opinion, to lock up someone who is a petty thief. It was somebody who was to keep the public safe from someone who was habitually putting our public at harm's way. So we changed those sentences to say, if you have nonviolent offenses on those other occasions, then that could be, you could consider that on that third one. Similarly, on mandatory minimums, we didn't, while we did not in this law strip all mandatory minimums, we did make changes to mandatory minimums that would then allow for the judge to make decisions based on the crime. So we took that power. We took the crimes, the ability for the judge. We gave the ability for the judge to make decisions based on what the crime and the circumstances were, as opposed to trying to apply this formulaic system of justice. You can't just have a person comes in, they come in under X crime, and you don't know their circumstances, you don't know anything else, and you give out 20 years, and the circumstances don't warrant it. So we have to think differently about how we do policing and how we do criminal justice.
Now, I imagine that the police unions are not very happy. I know I've read some of this and some of the articles that I've been reading about this. What's your answer back to the police unions? I mean, you have the support, you got to sign up by the governor, but are you looking for any challenges from police unions? What is the chatter that's going on that you're hearing as it relates to that?
Absolutely. I'm in the team. You know me. I'm a lawyer by trade, and when you're trying a case, they say if you have the facts, you argue the facts. If you have the law, you argue the law. If you have neither, you attack the process. So that's what we're seeing here. We're seeing an attack on the process. So I've heard everything about the bill passed under the cover of darkness, and police officers didn't have a seat at the table, and they didn't have the ability to have their say. Well, all those things are false. First, we had 9 public hearings of the Senate's criminal law, which I used to chair, the Senate's public safety, and the House Judiciary Committee. So 9 joint hearings of all three committees with members from both Democrats and Republicans, and testimony. So 9 public hearings, over 30 hours of testimony. Let me say that again for the people in the back. 9 public hearings, over 30 hours of testimony. So and that started September 1st. So from September 1st through January 5th, which was the first day when the first iteration of this bill was introduced, that was 126 days. 4 months and 4 days between the first hearing and the day the first bill got introduced. During that time, we had numerous discussions, negotiation sessions. We discussed this thing. We talked, and even after the bill had been introduced, we still continued to negotiate. The last negotiation session we had before the bill was passed, I asked no less than 5 different times, do you have a proposal that you want us to consider? There was never a proposal given to us. What we got was what law enforcement has said, we laid out our priorities and our proposal. They gave us a 15-point press release that says, here are our priorities, not actual language, but a press release. And of those 15 points, we addressed a number of those, the vast majority of those points, 2/3 of those points in the Safety Act. Now, it might not have been the way they wanted. It might not have been the exact language, but we addressed them. So they said they wanted body cameras. Body cameras are required statewide. They said they wanted they wanted to have a statewide use of force standard. The statewide use of force standard is included. They wanted additional training. Additional training is included in the bill. They wanted a focus on mental health services for law enforcement officers. It is included in the bill. So so to me, that when you have made those types of accommodations and address the issues that they've laid out, to me, it's not about the policy, it's about the politics at that point. So it has moved from being about policy, from being about safety to this is about politics now. And it's about politics, as you mentioned earlier, there are a number of other states looking at this type of legislation. So they want to make the aftermath of what happened in Illinois so distasteful that no one else will try it, and they want to make this an issue for Illinois legislators who voted for it. So we will stop on reform issues. You know, another perfect example: the Illinois Republican Party just announced a new chairman, and one of his first comments as chairman was that the Illinois Democrats are anti-police. If that does not, you know, telegraph what the game plan is, I don't know what does.
Look, we got to take a break. I do want to also say, I know you mentioned the Attorney General. I want to put this out that the Attorney General is a former state senator, Kwame Raoul. So, you know, it's really interesting to see how all these things came together. But we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to have our roundtable where Earl, JSMILES, and Nick are going to join us as we continue this conversation with State Senator Elgie Sims.
Love the topic.
All right.
How we rolling? How we rolling, the team? How do?
We're good. This is great. We got about another 10 minutes for our conversation.
Okay.
Are you good? All right.
I'm good. I'm great.
Okay.
I hope I'm giving y'all some good talking points, stuff you can talk about.
Oh, absolutely. Okay. You guys ready? All right, we're back. It's Chalkboard Conversations. It's Wednesday night, and we have with us State Senator Elgie Sims. Joining me now are JSMILES and Earl, our triggered realist, to continue our conversation about this historic legislation that was passed in the state of Illinois. Senator Sims, I'm sorry, let me introduce you to JSMILES and Earl. Jay is our resident comedian, so be careful. I don't know what she might say.
Well, good to meet you both.
Nice to meet you.
You all were back in our virtual green room listening to our conversation. What are your thoughts about, you know, what we were talking about in terms of this legislation? You know, we keep hearing about, you know, when we talk about the lynching, as Senator Sims said in our last segment, of George Floyd. You know, we've seen this, you know, we can say Ahmaud Arbery and Eric Garner and Tamir Rice and Breonna Taylor and Sandra in Texas. I mean, there's so many stories about this. What are your thoughts in terms of this legislation? You know, in terms of it's necessary. I don't even want to ask you, do you think it's necessary? But what are your thoughts?
I'm going to jump in first, and I'll just say that I've been a black man my whole life, and I say that's only important.
I thought Jay was a comedian.
I wasn't ready for that.
That's why she's going to do that better than I did. But as a result, obviously, anything that has to do with fixing the criminal justice system in this country is beneficial. I did do some research, and I recognized that the qualified immunity was actually it was a difficult sticking point negotiation wise in Illinois. Is there anything that we as citizens could do, or even citizens in Illinois could have done to help you when you're negotiating that point? So as we start growing around the country, you're going to get it the next time around. That's not a problem. But as we look at that, what was used as a talking point to kind of go against qualified immunity? And how can we be better prepared for those talking points in debates? Does that question make sense?
Earl, great. It makes perfect sense. It's a great point. You know, I talked about advocates at the table, and that's absolutely what's necessary in this moment.
Right.
Having the advocates to stand up, and again, in the last segment, I also talked about how the opponents have tried to make this discussion so distasteful that nobody wants to engage in the reform discussion anymore. We have been out talking to community members and community leaders for the last week and a half, 2 weeks. I just left a press conference with the governor, where he and I joined with the lieutenant governor and some other advocates, local elected officials, local state senators and representatives who voted for the legislation to talk and put a bright light on community members who support this, because that's the narrative. The narrative is that these things the community, they won't make the community safe, which is absolutely false. we had and it was a very powerful story shared with us by a sister at the press conference earlier today, where her son was shot twice in the back. And she was a proponent of, particularly of the elimination of qualified immunity. But she was also a supporter of us and the reforms that we made to the use of deadly force here in Illinois. But that what we need is for people to not rest on their laurels and say, hey, the Safety Act is passed, they've got it done, we're good. No, we need folks to stay engaged, because the opponents have stayed engaged. They continue to they attack on social media. They're in the news. I did a town hall with several of our state's attorneys, and the moderator asked one of the state's attorneys, well, why do you oppose the bill? And she said, well, it's anti-police. And I said, well, how is anti-police? You tell me how reforming the use of deadly force is anti-police. You tell me how making decisions, pretrial decisions, based on a person's threat to public safety or getting them to appear in court is somehow anti-safety. Again, going back to attacking the process, not the product. So we need folks to tell the truth about this bill, stay engaged. I get it. Change is tough. James Baldwin once said that not everything that we face can be changed, but nothing can be changed if it's not faced. That is exactly where we are. We got to have these tough conversations. We've got to have them, and if we don't, the folks who I often tell this story about the differences in experiences, and like you, Earl, been a black man all my life. I can't. That's something you can't take off. But it's difficult when the only thing that exists, your only probable cause is my skin color. And it's I tell the story. I was taking my dog to the vet, and we drove to the vet. And my one in the suburban part of my district. So my district is the south side of the city of Chicago, the southern suburbs, and then rural Will and Kentucky County. Taking the dog to the vet. We're in the suburbs. As we driving back, I'm driving past. There's a group of young white men. They're walking down the street. Police cars parked in the parking lot. They walk past him. They walk past police car. They wave. The police officer waves back at him. Then I drove to around by my house, and what do you see? There was a group of young black men sitting on a curb, 2 police cars behind the car, and the police officers were tearing through their vehicle. That was two very different experiences for how young black people experience and interact with law enforcement. And again, studies show that young blacks are no more likely to have contraband, and in fact are less likely to have contraband than their white counterparts. So we've got to change this mentality, and until we do, we will continue. Again, another. I'm big on folks and sayings. JSMILES, I heard you talk about listening. Doing the quote. Doing the same thing and expecting a different result is the very definition of insanity. If we continue to do the same thing and somehow think that we're going to get something different, we are insane, and that's not what government is all about, and that's not what it should be all about.
No.
Go ahead, girl.
My only other follow-up, because I was going to get it right in underneath that. I recognize that it looks like the compromise was on oversight by a community group. Obviously, I think I want both. I think I want the removal of qualified immunity and this community oversight group. I think you nailed it with that, by the way. Thank you. And I just wanted to finish with the
absolutely.
Nicely done.
No, absolutely. And Earl, you're right. We're not done. You saw that there were a number of folks who questioned the qualified immunity. So what did we do? We created a task force that would allow experts, community members, and law enforcement to have these discussions about qualified immunity come back. So we wanted to have individuals from the Illinois State Bar Association and the trial lawyers, folks who try these cases on a daily basis, so they can share their experience and craft a policy that works for everybody. And that's the goal. And that's the plan.
Thank you so very much.
Earl,
Jay, you want to get in?
Absolutely. Fantastic. Well, I've never been a black man. Please.
Thank God.
I didn't want to be in the conversation. I was like, man, they just about to squeeze us out of this. I'm gonna get in here. But I am from Montgomery.
Black man magic.
But I'm from Montgomery, Alabama, so I fully understand every part of that relationship of the Black community and the police. So from that vantage point, I understood everything you were saying. So first and foremost, I want to say, wow. Tiba, initially you asked what were our thoughts while we were in the green room. I was exhausted, Senator. When you gave the very layered and textured story of how this bill came to be. Thank you for sharing that, because it really just underscores how nothing happens overnight at all in government. Even though it may appear that, this was, you had it lined up and all of a sudden you're in the news and it's getting all the write-up and everybody's talking about it. But you named years and years, like more than a decade of work that you've been putting in, and times that things did not pass, but you stayed the course. And so thank you for that. And I'm appreciative of that story getting out. What I would like to ask you is, what wasn't as hard as you thought it would be during this process? Like, was there a surprise ally that you were like, oh man, I really didn't expect this group in the community? Maybe it's a group of churches, maybe it's somebody across the aisle, even if you don't want to name them, but where you had fortified yourself, as a lawyer. I'm also a lawyer. I'm not as involved in the law as you are right now, but maybe you had fortified yourself to say, we're going to have to really be prepared. And you were like, oh man, I put 2 weeks into this, and they just laid down.
I wouldn't say, Jay, I wouldn't say it was easy, but it was absolutely an opportunity. That last summer's civil unrest provided a very unique opportunity. We're looking at, I'm a student of history also. We're looking at 100 years later, 100 years ago here in the state of Illinois, we were dealing with, similar, just like everybody else was dealing with the Spanish flu pandemic. So, 100 years ago, we were dealing with the convergence of three challenges: the Spanish flu pandemic, the Great Depression, and the civil unrest that we were having here. So, the NAACP, there was a race riot that took place in 1908 in Springfield, Illinois, which led to the creation of the NAACP. So fast forward 100 years, we're still talking about the same issues, and we have the same basic three challenges. We had the economic crisis, which exists, and we had the pandemic of COVID-19, and then we had the remnants of the pandemic of COVID-19. So we had that convergence all coming together, and it created it created this opportunity for folks to, and a word I have been using quite a bit lately is empathy. It allowed some of my colleagues to walk a mile in my shoes when they actually got the opportunity. You hear the stories of Ahmaud Arbery, you hear the story of Tamir Rice, but folks are watching the news and they're flipping through the news and they don't really zoom in. But when we were all locked in and our attention was focused, because we were all locked in, because we all stay under stay-at-home orders because of the quarantine, folks had to sit there and watch that. And it created an opportunity for them to say, man, is that really what happens in your community? And then that's why we were able to have these really authentic, tough discussions. And I had some discussions with some of my colleagues that I had never had like this before. You come into the chamber, everybody, we talk, we pass our bills, we go home, we go back to our respective districts. But I had colleagues calling me and saying, hey, man, I'd like to know, and I'd like to hear, your perspective. I'd like to hear about your experience. And I took that opportunity, and members of the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus, we took that as an opportunity to invite them into our world. You know, we had folks back during the height of the civil unrest, the Joint Black Caucus of elected officials. So that's elected officials, Black elected officials at the federal, state, and local levels. We had these days of action, and we went out and we marched and we went into communities. And my white colleagues that came out and they participated in that. Our Senate president, he was right there with me. The governor, we hosted one in my district, and the governor came and he walked streets with me. We visited business together, and it gave them opportunity to, again, walk a mile in our shoes. You cannot understand someone's perspective unless you walk in their shoes and you get a chance to see that. And if you have not felt the sting, and the four of us on this call, we all have our individual experiences. Like you, Jay, my parents are from the South, and so I could do a whole podcast on those experiences from the South. But if folks have never felt the sting of injustice, it's hard to explain it to them. And the other part of that discussion is, when folks hear the word racism, they have this visceral response. And we were talking about the Black Caucus's agenda was to rid Illinois of systemic racism. And I would always remind my colleagues, be able to separate systemic racism from you being racist. Systemic racism means that advantages are given to some and disadvantages built into systems against others. That doesn't mean that you're racist, but you have to be able to separate yourself from those. And that was those opportunities which present themselves. Some of them I didn't see coming early on, but they became crucial as we got ready to pass the bill.
Look, you all were prepared and you jumped on the opportunity. Kudos. Tremendous.
Tremendous.
Look, Senator Sims, I want to thank you so much for joining us. I also want to say, I know in the last segment I mentioned former state senator Kwame Raoul, who was Illinois' first Black attorney general, but I also want to highlight the fact that Chris Welch in the House is the first African-American speaker. So, we see a lot of these issues. I think it's just really important also for us to highlight too, when we're also seeing some other wins and that we're moving in. Sometimes we feel like we're not moving in the right direction, but I think it's really important for us not only to tell the stories about what's going on from a police injustice or criminal justice standpoint, but let's also talk about and highlight too that we're seeing the elevation of African-American leaders. We saw January 20th, Kamala Harris, also a former state official, former state attorney general in California, become and then a United States Senator, become the first African-American and first woman of Asian descent to become the vice president of the United States. So I think it's really important if we continue humanizing this, that we try to tell as much of the bigger story as we can. So thank you so much for joining us and with this. And you are more than welcome to join us anytime that you are free. This has been a great conversation.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much for having me. And I look forward to being back. I enjoy the podcast, so I'll be back.
All right, great. Thank you so much. That was State Senator Elgie Sims. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to go to Sip of the Brew with Nick Jackson. All right. That was a great conversation.
Mm-hmm. It was.
But Steve, this was one of the few projects that I worked on at the NAACP when I was building apps. Like this.
You need to move up.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Earl, you need to move up.
I can move up.
All right. We are back. I had to put my glasses on because I want to get this right. We're going to be joined now by Nick Jackson. I want you all to know when entertainment, politics,
and foolery.
Wait, I want to do that again. Nope. I want to do that again, please. Stop. See, this is the fun part, right? One day we have to do some outtakes of this show.
3,
all right.
You're doing
2, 3, 2, 1.
All right. When entertainment, politics, and foolery collide, Witches Brew co-founder Nick Jackson is all over it. She's joining us now from the mothership with a sip of the brew.
Hi, guys.
I love that teaser before when we first started the show. I'm really looking forward to hearing what you got to talk about. Especially start talking about teasing and Cuomo and what you got. What's cool.
Right.
It seems like every day is something else.
We're gonna get to that in a minute, but first I just wanted to give a huge rest in peace, RWG, to civil rights icon Vernon Jordan. He passed away a day after Black History Month ended, so that's kind of fitting. Atlanta born, Howard grad, there he is, and just a kick-ass lawyer. So did a lot, lived a lot, and his family was by his side. The cause of death was not released, and so we just wanted to like kind of give a little shout out and heaven to him.
Absolutely. It's interesting. He's somebody who I always wanted to meet. I've been in the same room with him. I never met him. My dad, though, always tells these stories. He didn't know Vernon Jordan, but they actually share the same birthday. And he was born 4 years before my dad. And my father used to say that they would run into each other. And he's like, Mr. Jordan will always walk up to him as if he knew him. But to me, Vernon Jordan was one of the classiest guys, and he just seemed to always be, the play Hamilton. He just always seemed to be in the room where it happened. So definitely, He was not just an icon; he was a mover and somebody who was able to get things done.
I first got familiar with him around the Bill Clinton era, so that's when I first started hearing his name, and it's always, been interesting. He seems like kind of an enigma, kind of that.
He's a friend of Bill for sure.
Absolutely.
Oh, at a time when Bill needed some friends.
Right. That's gang. That's the people you want on your team.
That part.
Okay. So
corporate America and on Wall Street.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. So rest in peace. Who's not resting in peace right now is Governor Andrew Cuomo. He's in some hot water. And I was wondering, does Cuomo have FOMO? Get it? Fear of missing out? Because his ways of touchy-feeliness has gotten him in some trouble. But today he came out for the first time since a third woman came forth with her tales of inappropriate touching, and he apologized, and he said that he didn't want to make anybody feel that way. He kind of chalked it up to, he's old school. And when he said that, that kind of resonated with me. I think I teased that at the beginning of the show. Any older man, and I put my dad in this group too, sometimes they can get a little touchy-feely. They grew up in a different time. So again, it's Women's History Month. I'm believing women. However, I don't know that this is cut and dry for me. Everybody else can have their own opinion, obviously, but I don't know. Maybe I want to believe the best in people. I really think that maybe he's just got a little flirty. I don't know, but we'll see where this goes. They asked him if he was going to resign. He flat out said, nah, he's not doing that. He said, no. He's not doing that. He's not going to do that. So,
for what? No, just kidding. No.
I mean, it's funny.
It's a real answer. It's a real question. It's a real answer. But yeah,
that's true. My point to the allegations, it's very curious that as much as he's been in the media, they only have come forward at this time. That's just curious to me. Not that I discount the women or the approach. Yeah. I do believe that they have very different stories. The young woman who said he touched me at the small of my back at a party
at the wedding, and then they had that picture.
I moved it, and he moved, and the hand moved, and then he put his hands on her cheek and asked, could he kiss her, and she said no. And I was waiting for a little more. Now, I don't know if she's going to give more to her lawyer or to potentially to the prosecutor.
Right.
I will say that as a woman, hand on the small of your back, you move it.
It's creepy, but it's not like, I don't know. I'm trying to tread carefully here, but I just think there's there's something with the millennials and the fragility, and I'm just going to leave it at that. I mean,
I'm going to say this. Can I add this? I can't say that I've ever had a woman come and put her hand on the small of my back, or put her hands on or or put her hands on my cheeks. Now I've been in clubs where I've had women pinch my butt, but you know that was like a hit and miss. I mean, like hit and run kind of thing because they kept going. But you know, there are men who have been operating. If any of you watched Mad Men, you remember the men during that era seemed to get away with everything. You know, it was. And women were considered to be subservient in a sense. So, you know, these times have changed. And I think that there's a lot of entitlement that's kind of in this where these men keep acting as if, and I've seen some things over the years that I thought were inappropriate. So I don't know if it's so much about the fragility part. I do hear what you're saying with that, Nick. I think that there has to be a level of respect. And I think that, you know, in terms of what we're hearing, you said the word allegations. That's a part that concerns me the most. Is that oftentimes there are these allegations, which could be true or not true. I think that we need to find a place where these allegations go and where it's proven before someone's name is destroyed. But it always makes it harder when there's not just one person, but now there's three.
Right. It does. I mean, I definitely think he has a touchy-feely issue. But again, in my heart of hearts, and I do believe women, and I believe that they did feel uncomfortable. I just feel as though it's a generational thing. And that may be me from my generation speaking out about it, but I just don't know. I don't think this is as cut and dry as other cases that I've heard. It doesn't hit me like that. But again, these are allegations. He's apologized. We'll see where it goes. But I definitely, you know, I feel for the women. Maybe that wasn't, I shouldn't have said that. But anyway, I just, you know, I understand. I understand. Okay. Speaking of feeling for the women, T.I. and Tiny, Lord help mercy. This daggone story is just a gift that keeps on giving. So clearly they're the family that prays, but prays, allegedly. So an attorney is asking California and Georgia to press charges against T.I. and Tiny. There's been a slew of women, I think like 30, who have come out with their tales of a night in T.I. and Tiny land. So apparently the couple goes to clubs, they identify women, they tell the women to come back to their hotel, give them dirty Sprite, which is a new term that I just was like, what is that? Like syrup adjacent? I don't know. It's dirty Sprite.
Yeah.
So anyway,
once you found out, you didn't even want to. You wish you didn't know, right?
Right. Molly water. I went down a whole little rabbit hole. Or maybe I shouldn't have said rabbit hole. I don't know. Anyway, I will just say that it looks like they're in some trouble. T.I. has been kicked off the Ant-Man movie, and that's a Marvel movie, so you know that's Marvel money, so that's not good. Their reality show's not filming anymore. ATL, I mean, it does come on reruns, and I do watch it every time it comes on, but that can't be paying the bills, and they have a lot of children. So this is a very sad situation, and it all started with Tiny's ex-best friend. So, I don't know where this is going. This is all alleged. They denied it vehemently. However, 30 women, this is rough. Maybe we shouldn't have said rough either. It's 30. 30. This is puns all over this place. Let me just stop. And I'm going to throw it back to you guys. Let me just stop it. That's a sip of the brew.
And then you said, let me just stop. Maybe they should have been told that.
Oh, yeah, that's true too. But for more stories like this, you could definitely check out Witches Brew on Facebook. We have a huge following over there. So just give us a shout. And I'm going to send it back to you guys because we're walking in all type of like potholes over here.
NDAs just aren't what they used to be, apparently. NDAs used to keep you safe.
Oh, well, they did take they took their cell phones. They took their cell phones. They did take that. But yeah, NDAs, I don't know if they...
That doesn't sound expeditious.
You know, T.I., he'll hit him with the vocabulary extraordinaire. I mean, he's like all over the place. But, you know, we'll see how this plays out.
It's pertinent. It should be a priority.
All right. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to go to thanks management with the Triggered Realist.
It's me.
All right. We're back. Look, we're going to thanks management. Earl describes himself as a triggered realist. He's from Capitol Hill to K Street, politics to advertising. We give you our triggered realist, Earl.
So this past weekend, I got a chance to spend some time, just around the city, walking around with my mask on. And I saw some kids who had started their own little field day, like they almost like Olympic events, track and field. They're running around, they're throwing things. But their long distance run was going to take place going around one full block. When it came back around to this one small alley, they wanted some kind of some kind of tape for them to run through, like the finish line of a major race. And having a MacGyver thought at the last minute, I gave $5 to one of the kids to go get some Scotch tape. And because he was going to get it from a CVS, I figured that all he needed was the Scotch tape, and the receipt alone would be long enough for them to use it as a tape for the end of the race. I don't know why these receipts are 20 feet long, but they are. And every time CVS talks about something that they want to do with the environment, I think maybe just shrink the receipt a little bit. You don't need all 20 feet just to whatever. But I've even seen art exhibits that have been done with nothing but hanging receipts from CVS's. Find some way to save the paper. Maybe we could be helping out the planet. Just a thought. Nyada, you still there? Okay. Well, she'd actually made mention early when I talked to her privately about I think she likes the coupons. The coupons could last a little bit longer, but if you can't do the thing that you need to for her, at least just for me, make the receipt shorter. That's thanks management. That's all.
All right. Look, whenever I go to CVS, I honestly am always wondering why it's just goes. You're just like waiting, and then you look at it, and then you feel like if you don't check it out, you might be missing something that you might want to use. And usually, it might be one thing is all the way at the bottom of the slip. But thanks for that. Thanks management. We're gonna take one more break, and when we come back, we're gonna have lighten up, and then we're gonna go to the lightning round. All right, we're back. This is our comedic section, and this is the lighten up part. This is where we've had pretty deep conversations tonight about criminal justice, but we've got our conscious comic who uses levity to disrupt inequities observed in everyday life. She's an engineer, a lawyer, and designer. Her filter is rare, and she's also the host of Parenting Up, the podcast that sprinkles humor over the hardships for Alzheimer's and dementia family caregivers. Her mom has ALZ, Alzheimer's. For podcast and comedy bookings, you can go to jsmilescomedy.com. And you can also find her on Facebook and Instagram at jsmilescomedy. Jay, what you got in our lighten up segment?
Listen, weed the people, right? That's what we're talking about today. Criminal justice reform. Listen, are we the innovators? We are the United States of America. Come on, y'all. There are like 40,000 people who are in jail because they weed heads. That's it. That's not fair. That's not right. They're just like recreational playground, potpourri potheads. That's not fair. The cannabis industry alone made like $15 billion last year. There are like 15 states plus DC. I'm so sick of saying plus DC. Ugh. And 35 that where it's legal for recreational. Legal for recreational means you can do whatever you want to do with the weed. Okay. And there are 35 states plus DC that say, oh, you can use it long as you're sick. All right. Any kind of cough will do. That is basically like 35 plus 15. Do the math. 50 states that you can do something with some weed. All I'm saying is those 40,000 people, they are trailblazers. They were ahead of the game, okay? They are activists. They are experts. We all know some soccer mom who then got out here and has overdone it with the edibles. Has ended up in the ER because she didn't know what the hell she was doing. We need Carlos and Tamika, who are currently incarcerated, to teach her how to handle this weed. We got to let them out. It ain't right. They need the job The industry has come together off their backs. They made weed popular. And everybody else out here getting rich. That's not right.
Jay,
imagine if we said, you know what? You can go to school and you can learn everything, but then we're going to put you in jail for education, or we're going to let everybody else get jobs off what you learned in physics class. That's not right. They were ahead of the curve, y'all. So we got to lighten up. We're going to let them out. If weed is now legal in your state, you should be free. Read the people. Lighten up. JSMILES.
Jay, I just had one quick question. Yeah. I don't know if they can do that much coaching. The weed's stronger now. I just so everybody knows, the weed's stronger now.
Right? You know what?
It's stronger than it was 6 months ago, but it's stronger now. Like quarantine has gotten people creative.
According to my sources, who I can neither confirm nor deny, how I know this.
Okay.
The people who are incarcerated may or may not have already had access to what's currently on the market. They also have burner phones and Zoom calls. So there you have it.
If they've got access to it in there, why don't we just let them out anyway? Come on now.
The views expressed on the Lighten Up segment of Chalkboard Conversations presented by Party Politics US are the views solely of the
well played
of the segment. Anyway, look, thank you so much for that. We gotta go to our lightning round. Listen, the cute idiots are out there, and they're just doing a whole lot of. I don't want to use the word foolery. There's another word that I'd like to use that rhymes with a word that we use for our 2020 campaign, but I'm not going to say it right now. But you know, there's a lot of chatter about March 4th. Are congressional members being overly cautious, or should they be rushing to get their votes in tonight? So that they are not at the United States Capitol tomorrow for any votes.
So the question
is, should congressional members be rushing through to vote tonight as opposed to tomorrow because of fear or concerns that the cute idiots and their other stuff may attack the United States Capitol tomorrow?
Yeah, wrap it up. Let's go.
No, I think they should proceed with their scheduled vote. If we start kowtowing to these Jethros and these deliverance looking people, I mean, what's next? Like, are we going to like adapt and try to reschedule everything because there's a fear of something? No, they don't run it.
You bring up a really good point. You bring up a really good point. At some point, we got to lock these people up. Like at some point,
right?
At some point, it stops. Like, okay, let's say we do allow this to be the thing, but this has got to be the last thing. Like, at some point, this has to be a priority, that getting these people off of the streets or getting them away from places where they can hurt us. Again, if Al-Qaeda had announced it, we'd look into it. If Al-Qaeda had announced it, we would have looked into it already.
Looked into it. We'd have sent a drone. Jay,
facts.
Right, and back to my reference. Thank you so much, Atiba, with telling me Talking to Strangers by Malcolm Gladwell. How do we actually know that the intel for March 4th is correct? Hell, it could be that they're really coming tonight, which is why they said March 4th. So back to your point, Nick, stay with your schedule, because that particular group, they're so Johnny come lately with their approach, right? And they're not they're new to this is what I mean. I'm not saying that they're not passionate and they're not they are very willing to create chaos. Yes, but they don't follow standard rules and procedures around how you do attacks and how you create an army and things of that nature. So I don't know that you can trust what they've leaked, because they told us about the 6th. It didn't work. So perhaps this is a ruse. So stick to your schedule. I think you stick to your schedule, but whatever date you hear, you have the army and the government completely prepared to surround the Capitol. So you get all of the National Guard and the helicopters. Everybody is fortified, so they don't get within 5 miles of the Capitol.
I agree. Listen, I don't like the move. I think it's catering to these childish idiots who are upset because they lost an election. We already see enough of these votes that are going on around the country. We didn't even get a chance to talk about what I know that's happening in Indiana, where Indiana state legislators, black legislators, have been threatened, like literally threatened on the House floor. But we will talk about that hopefully next week. We are going to wrap another week of Chalkboard Conversations presented by Party Politics US. I want to thank my co-hosts, JSMILES, Earl Wyatt, Nick Jackson, and a special thank you to our guest tonight, State Senator Elgie Sims, and congratulations for the great work that he has done in getting that legislation passed in the state of Illinois. With that, thank you all for joining us. We look forward to having you join us again next week, 7 p.m., for another episode of Chalkboard Conversations. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.